Yes, good morning. Welcome to our unit of competence, conduct material testing 2. And our topic of today is perform timber testing. So by the end of this session, I expect you, the trainee or the learners, to be able to identify the performance test in timber. In performance test in timber, we need to check the physical property. And before that, the standards tests are generalized as one is physical property test. These tests measure the inherent characteristic of wood that affects its behavior in service. One of the nini we have to check is moisture content test. The purpose is to determine the amount of water in the wood, as MC significantly affects the strength and dimensional stability. The method you are going to use is oven dry method. A simple way is dried in an oven at 103 to 2 degrees Celsius until weight stabilizes and weigh again. The moisture, then we need to check the moisture meter. We use the moisture meter. The handle-held electrical resistance meters are used for quick, non-destructive checks. Then we need to check the density or specific gravity tests. The purpose is density is the best single indicator of the wood strength. The method here is measured by determining the mass per unit volume at a specific moisture content. Then we need to go to check the mechanical strength tests as number 2. Here, testing machine, the UTM, these tests determine the wood's ability to withstand loads. They are typically performed on a universal. Then we need to check the static bending test, the flexure. The purpose of determining this bending test is to determine the modulus of rupture, the MOR. Under here is the load bearing capacity, and the modulus of elasticity, MOE, the stiffness of deflection. The method you're going to use is a beam is supported at a 2 ends and loaded in the center, 3-point bending, or at a 2 points, the 4-point bending until failure. We need to check the compression test. We'll see on our diagram one of the compressor machine. Then here we test the parallel to the grain. Measure the timber ability to act as a column or post. This is where the wood is strongest. Then we also need to test the perpendicular to grain. Measure resistance to crushing, where a beam rests on a wall plate. This is where it is strong. Then we have the tensile strength test. We check the parallel to the grain, pulling the wood apart along the fibers. Wood is incredibly strong in tension, but difficult to test with it. Then we have the perpendicular to the grain, pulling the fibers apart sideways. Wood is very weak here, prone to splinting. Okay, we move to the shear test. We need to test the timber shear test. The purpose of testing the shear test is to measure the ability of fibers to slide past one another. The method you're going to use is a load. Load is applied to cause one part of the specimen to slip over the other along the grain. Is crucial for the beams, especially beams. Then we need to test the hardness test, the Jacka hardness. The purpose of testing the Jacka hardness is to measure the resistance to the dirt and wear, which we call the vital for the flooring. The method you're going to use is a 0.44-inch steel ball is then embedded halfway into the wood. The force is required, then is recorded. Then we also need to check the impact bending or toughness test. Number 3, one of the tests is durability and biological test. First thing you need to remember, we check the physical, mechanical. Now we are checking the durability and the biological test. In durability and biological tests, and how it explains just openly, are often long-term tests to see how timber survives environmental threats. Here we test the fungal decay resistance. As you know, the work of the fungal is destroy the timber. So if we don't test, it will destroy. So the method we're going to use is a small small blocks of timber are exposed to specific rot fungi. Is then controlled. We test it in the laboratory environment for weeks or months. Weight is lost, is then measured to determine the decay. We also need to test the insect or termite resistance. The method we are going to use is The timber samples are placed in a containers with active termites or beetles to observe the level of damage or consumption over time. We also need to check the weathering tests. The method we are going to use is we need to accelerate the weathering machines, the UV lights, and water spray or natural field exposure are used to test the finishes and natural durability. Lastly, we need to check the non-destructive testing, the NDT. Here is used to evaluate the existing structures or regrading timber without damaging it. The thing that you are going to check is the visual stress grading. Inspect the knocks, the shakes, the splints, and the grain slope. Then assigning a structural grade based on a standardized rules. This one you need to know the internal parts of a timber. Then we need to check the ultrasonic or the stress wave timing. Sound waves are sent through the timber. Faster transmission indicates sound. Dense wood, slower transmission indicates decay or internal voids. We also need to check the drill resistance. It's also known as the resist graph. A fine needle is drilled into the wood at a constant speed. The resistance is recorded on a graph. Drops in a resistance indicates internal rot or hollows. We also need to check the moisture mapping, which is the lastly. We use the capacitance meters to map moisture levels across a large area to find active leaks or dam pockets. In summary, I've just showed you some of the diagrams, the pictures of the bending test machine and how the woods are being bent on the machine. Like picture 1 shows the wood is being bent. Then picture 2 is a compressor machine. We have seen how it compressed the wood. It shows how the wood is, if it is weak, it cracks. Yes, thank you for your time. Your trainer Anifa. Thank you very much.